Hey guys, tonight we clock in. You arrive at the factory gates just before the bell clangs half a second, before being officially late, which in this place might as well be a death sentence. The air smells like coal smoke, wet brick, and something sharp you can't quite name yet, but we'll later learn is your body's reaction to phosphorus vapors. You shuffle in behind a pack of children with hollow eyes and boots that barely qualify as shoes. Everyone moves in silence, except the floorboards, which groan like they hate their job more than you already do. Which is impressive. You walk past the foreman, who glances at your hands. Too clean. He frowns. New one. He mutters to no one in particular. He stamps your name in the ledger, wrong spelling. Doesn't matter, and gestures toward the dipping floor. You nod. That's apparently all the orientation you get. The walls are painted in grime. The ceiling weeps soot. The windows let in light like they're doing it under protest. You probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, drop your location and local time in the comments. I'd love to know where you're listening from while we crawl back through industrial despair together. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're handed an apron. It's already stained. Still damp. You're not sure with what. You don't ask. You follow the others to your station. A narrow plank table with metal trays, piles of matchsticks, and a bucket of something that smokes when stirred. A girl beside you, maybe 10, maybe 20. It's hard to tell, leans over and whispers, "Don't touch your face." Then she's gone. Just like that. Historians still argue how much factory workers understood about the poisons they handled. Some records show warnings posted near workstations. Others suggest owners actively downplayed the risks. Either way, the damage showed up in their bones. Your fringe fact tonight. One match factory doctor claimed he could diagnose phosphorus poisoning just by the color of someone's sweat. Spoiler. It wasn't pink. You touch a matchstick, it's light, innocent, harmless. For now. Then the bell rings, and your first shift begins. You're late, and also a child. Technically, you arrived before the bell, but late here isn't a time, it's a state of being. You're slower, softer, new. That makes you late for everything expectations. Reflexes, resilience, and it shows. The girl next to you, Eliza, apparently moves like she's part machine. Dip, stack, slide, blink. Her hands are stained with yellow and flecked with white powder. Her fingertips twitch constantly, like they've forgotten how to rest. You try to keep up. You really do. You dip too slowly. The liquid clings, drips, smokes slightly. You're supposed to let it dry for 3 seconds. You let it dry for 5. Too long, Eliza says, without looking at you. Then too short. Then you'll get yelled at soon. You do. The foreman passes by and barks. Who let the infant near the trays? You open your mouth to explain. He cuts you off with a wave. Don't speak. You'll breathe wrong and set us all alight. You nod. Apologize with your posture. He moves on. You've officially joined the club. Historians still argue about the average age of Victorian match factory workers. Some sources suggest children as young as 5 were employed to sort, stir, and package. Others claim regulations existed, but weren't enforced unless someone important was watching. Your fringe fact tonight. In 1867, a match factory inspector noted that most of the workers could not recall their birthdays. Not because they were illiterate, but because they were never told. You don't speak again for 2 hours. You just dip and stack. And try not to touch anything with the tips of your fingers, which are beginning to tingle. You realize your shirt sleeve has a tiny hole near the cuff. You wonder what happens if it soaks in the wrong spot. You wonder a lot of things. How many matches you've handled. How much poison fits in a drop. How long your body can do this before something goes numb that isn't supposed to. Eliza offers you a rag to wipe your hands. You thank her with your eyes. She shrugs. Don't get used to kindness. It's rationed like everything else. At midday, the bell rings again. You look up, expectant. Elbows in, says someone behind you. It's just the lunch warning. You won't be eating, but you'll get 6 minutes to stand near the door and pretend you're human again. That's the deal here. Late to everything, except the consequences. The air tastes like toothache. You're only 3 hours in, and already, your mouth feels wrong. Not dry, not sore, just chemically incorrect. There's a sweetness in the air, sharp and clingy, that slides down your throat and coats your tongue in something that tastes like chalk, left too long in a wet boot. You swallow. It doesn't help. Your gums are starting to ache too. A weird, deep ache, like they're bruised from the inside. You glance around to see if anyone else notices. They do. They just don't react. Because this is normal. This is match breath. Everyone in this building has it. It's how they recognize one another on the street. A faint halo of phosphorus perfume. The smell of future illness in every exhale. You breathe through your mouth for a bit, then your nose. Neither feels better. The room is hot, but not warm. There's no comfort in the heat here. It's dry, sharp, constantly laced with the sting of open trays of yellow phosphorus, which fumes gently into your lungs with every blink. You cough. Just once. It echoes. Eliza glances over. Start chewing parsley when you get home, she says softly. If you can afford it. You nod like you understand. You do not. Historians still argue how much match workers understood about the link between the fumes and phossy jaw, the necrosis that starts with pain and ends with pieces of your face falling off. Some reports claim warnings were given. Others suggest silence was cheaper. Your fringe fact tonight. One factory required workers to rinse their mouths with vinegar every day to neutralize the sting. It didn't work, but it did make people smell like pickled death. You keep working. Dip, stack, count. Your hand cramps once. You stretch it, casually, like you're not worried it means something worse. Across the room, a girl about your age sneezes. Everyone jumps, because sneezing can mean disruption. Disruption means danger. You catch the foreman's glare. He doesn't like noise, or reminders that the workers have lungs. You tuck your head down and keep your pace. You feel your gums again, throbbing now. You run your tongue along your teeth. They feel soft, just a little. You tell yourself it's your imagination, but you already know it isn't, because the air here doesn't feed you. It eats you. One breath at a time. Your apron catches fire briefly. You've settled into the rhythm of it now, if rhythm means sacrificing your sense of smell, time, and joy in exchange for not being yelled at every 12 minutes. Dip, dry, stack, blink, repeat. You're getting faster, almost too fast. Because speed feels like survival in this place until it isn't. It happens during what Eliza calls the afternoon lull, that dead-eyed stretch after lunch, when your body wants to sit down, but the foreman wants productivity charts to go up. You dip, you lift, you swing just a little too far toward the drying tray, which is a little too close to the open burner used for sealing match heads. The bottom of your apron flutters and ignites. It's not a dramatic Hollywood fireball. Just a woof, hiss of yellow flame curling up like it's saying hello. You freeze. Eliza moves faster. She grabs the hem and slams it to the floor, stomping with a heel that's clearly done this before. Someone throws sand. The foreman stomps over. Doesn't ask if you're hurt. Just snarls. Move slower near the burn line. We don't need another incident. Another. That means there were others. No one talks about them. Historians still argue how often match factory fires occurred. Some sources suggest monthly, if not weekly. Others insist safety protocols were strictly followed. Those sources tend to be written by the factory owners. Your fringe fact tonight. In one case, a girl's hair caught fire from a single spark, and she was later charged for damaging inventory because she dropped a tray while burning. You sit down for a second on a crate, heart still thudding. Eliza hands you a rag. Your apron is scorched at the edge, a little melted. You run your hand over the fabric and feel the crisp, brittle edges. You're lucky, she says. You nod. You always are until you're not. You go back to work. The smell of singed cloth and skin lingers, but the tray still needs to be stacked. The clock doesn't care. Neither does the phosphorus. Yes, that's someone's jawbone. You're getting faster now. Your hands dip and stack almost without thinking. Muscle memory is doing its best to keep you from falling behind. So it takes a second to notice what's sitting on the tray near the sorting pile. At first, it looks like a shard of ivory, pale, curved, small. Then you see the grooves, then the socket. And then your brain finally tells you what it is: a piece of jaw, human, with a molar still intact. You blink. Hard. You glance around. No one's reacting. Not even Eliza. She just moves the tray aside with the tip of her rag and keeps working like it's nothing more than a misplaced button. You don't ask whose it is. Because in here, questions are too expensive. The answer might be Mary, or Annie, or you, if you're not careful. You go back to stacking. You keep one eye on your own fingers. Like watching them will keep the rest of you from falling apart. This is what they whisper about. Phossy jaw. It starts with toothaches, swelling, tenderness in the gums, then the pain, then the skin changes. Then, one day, a piece of your face just lets go. No warning. Just goodbye. Historians still argue whether the condition was treatable in its early stages. Some say doctors offered extractions and bone scrapes. Others note that most workers were too poor to afford even basic treatment, so they were dismissed quietly once the smell got bad. Your fringe fact tonight. A match girl once testified in court with the scarf wrapped around her face. She'd lost half her jaw. The factory owner offered her a half pension if she agreed not to speak publicly again. You wrap a bit of cloth around your lower face, not because it'll help, but because it feels like you're doing something. Eliza leans in and says, "You'll get used to it." You want to believe she means the smell, not the bone. Not the fact that every breath might leave a part of you behind. But you already know better. You work a little slower after that. Not enough to be noticed. Just enough to feel like you still belong to yourself. Break time. standing quietly by a wall. You hear the bell ring twice. It's not loud. Just enough to cut through the fog of smoke and machinery and make everyone straighten slightly, like they've all been conditioned to snap to attention at the exact same note. It's your 6-minute break. That's not a rounding error. It's 6. Precisely. You don't sit. You don't eat. You don't speak unless you're whispering. You just file out of the dipping room into the corridor wide enough for 1.5 people to lean without touching and stand against the wall. Some kids cough. Some scratch at burns hidden under sleeves. One boy pulls off his cap and picks phosphorus dust from his scalp like dandruff made of matches. You stand next to Eliza. She leans her head back, not to rest, just to stop it from falling forward. You try to stretch without making it obvious. Your back cracks like old wood. Your feet throb. The corridor is drafty, but that's actually a blessing. There's air here. Not good air. Not air you'd bottle and sell. But it's less poison than what's behind the tray lines. No one smiles. No one jokes. This isn't a break. It's a pause in torment. Historians still argue whether factory breaks were mandated by law or simply offered when foremen wanted to pretend they weren't running a slow-motion execution line. Some factory reports list rest periods generously. Diaries from workers tell a grimmer story: 5 minutes to lean, 1 to pray. Your fringe fact tonight. One factory in East London was praised for its progressive rest schedule, 8 minutes twice per shift. The workers called it the luxury of dying slowly. You try to count your breaths. You make it to 12 before someone gets nudged back to work. Eliza groans softly. "That's the second bell," she says. "No more standing." You file back in. Your fingers are stiff now. You rub them against your apron until the tingling returns. Not because it feels good, but because feeling anything is starting to matter more than comfort. As you step into the dipping room, you swear the smell hits harder, like it's angry you left. The trays are waiting. The phosphorus fumes stretch toward you like smoke with ambition, and break time already a memory. Your fingers are now glue tools. The trays are stacked high again. You return to your station, and the rhythm picks up right where it left off. Dip, flick, roll, stack. No reintroduction, no welcome back. You just become part of the machine again. Only now your hands are slower, stiffer. The tips of your fingers feel like someone replaced them with sandpaper and lit the edges on fire. You glance down. Your nails are tinged yellow. The skin around them is puckering dry, but sticky. Your fingers stick to the matches, to the tray, to each other. Eliza notices. She nudges your elbow. Keep moving or they'll start to glue. You want to ask what she means, but you already know. The phosphorus paste is setting on your skin. It doesn't just stain, it binds. You flex, it hurts. The joints in your knuckles tingle with that bright, needle-like sting that says you're doing something wrong, and your nerves have filed a complaint. You dip another bundle. You blink. You misplace a match, it sticks to your palm. You peel it off slowly, hoping no one notices the skin that comes with it. They do, but they don't say anything. They've been here before. Historians still argue whether match factory workers had access to gloves or any protective gear. Some records suggest makeshift coverings, thin cloth, paper wraps. Others insist bare-handed work was more efficient, especially when children were involved. Your fringe fact tonight. One London match girl reported fingers so stiff by age 15, she couldn't fully close her fists unless they were dipped in hot water first to loosen the chemical crust. You keep your hands moving. The tray absorbs your focus. You stop feeling the pain directly. It becomes background noise like the ticking of a clock, or the whisper of something behind your ear that you've decided not to listen to. Someone near you coughs. Someone else drops a match bundle and mutters a curse you're not supposed to know at your age. You glance over at Eliza. She's not blinking. Neither are you, because even that wastes energy. You lose track of time again. Your fingertips now feel like candle wax, not soft, not numb, just wrong. But you're still working, which means you're still employed, which means for now you still exist. You've been assigned to the sulfur room. It's sudden. Barely a sentence. The foreman walks by, mutters sulfur, points a thumb toward the back wall, and moves on. Eliza gives you a look, not pity. Exactly. Just recognition. She's been there. Everyone has, at least once. You stand slowly. Your joints creak like old door hinges. Your fingers no longer feel like yours, just extensions of something gritty and grimy and burned at the edges. You walk toward the rear corridor, past the dipping trays, past the wrapping benches, past the bucket marked "Do Not Fall In." You don't ask until you reach a thick door held open with a brick and the smell of death warmed slightly. You step in. The sulfur room is exactly what it sounds like: small, hot, smoky, yellow-stained. There's a fire in the corner, not for heat but for cooking up the sulfur batches used to prep the matchsticks before they get dipped in the good stuff. The walls sweat. The air stings. And in the middle of it all is a shallow metal vat, bubbling like a potion in a badly written fairy tale. You're handed a long wooden spoon. A girl older, with eyes like flint and the posture of someone who's seen too much, tells you. Stir clockwise. Always clockwise. Don't breathe too deep. You stir. The mixture is thick. It pulls at the spoon like it wants to keep it. Each bubble pops with a faint hiss, releasing a smell that makes your sinuses curl inward and your lungs consider filing a resignation. You try not to cough. You do anyway. Twice. The girl nods. First hour's the worst. Historians still argue whether sulfur exposure in match factories was a primary or secondary danger. Phosphorus took the headlines. But sulfur, hot, acidic, and unventilated, was the silent co-star in every medical report that ended with cause of death: respiratory collapse. Your fringe fact tonight: some sulfur rooms were ventilated through ceiling cracks that led directly into worker dormitories because, apparently, fresh air was for investors. You stir for 20 minutes, then 40. Your arms burn. Your eyes water. Your mouth tastes like pennies. You try to focus on something small: the sound of the spoon scraping the vat, the way the smoke curls upward before flattening against the ceiling, the strange yellow glow that paints your hands like they've been dipped in sunlight and regret. The girl says, if your nose starts bleeding, tilt your head. You nod. Because that's the sort of advice that belongs here. Practical, final. Eventually, the bell rings. You step out of the sulfur room, blinking like you've returned from another planet, one with worse weather, worse food, and only one hobby: chemical warfare. You sit on a crate. Eliza appears, sniffs. You smell like teeth. She says, you smile, but it's thin. Because the sulfur room leaves something behind, not just in your lungs, but somewhere deeper. Somewhere you can't quite reach with a rag or a prayer. Sneezing mias, sabotage. You're back on the main floor now. The sulfur has clung to your clothes like a jealous ex, and no one will stand too close except Brim, the foreman, who seems to enjoy the idea that you might combust if he glares hard enough. You're told to return to the trays, but not to dip, to monitor. Which sounds like a promotion. It isn't. It means you stand near the drying racks and keep an eye on anything that looks unstable, bubbled, over-dipped, flaking at the edges. In other words, tiny sticks of potential disaster. You're not trained for this. No one is. Training here means you haven't fainted yet. You watch the trays like they might explode at any moment. Because they might. Then it happens. A girl 3 stations down Marcy maybe sneezes. Just once. But it's loud. And sharp. And unfortunately timed. Her hand jerks. A tray tips. One match rolls off, lands too close to the burner. There's a hiss. Then a flash. Then someone screams. Sand. Everyone moves at once like dancers in a horrible, panicked ballet. Buckets fly, boots stomp, smoke billows. The match is out in seconds. But the smell lingers, and the silence that follows is personal. Brim stomps over. He doesn't look at the match. He looks at Marcy. Next time, sneeze into your apron. She nods, still shaking. He walks away. Everyone exhales, except Marcy. She's not breathing right. You hand her a cup of water someone thrust into your palm. She sips, mouth trembling, then goes back to work. Historians still argue whether Victorian match factories had formal fire safety protocols. Some had buckets, a few had bells. Most relied on the whoever screams first method and hoped the wooden floorboards didn't carry the flame. Your fringe fact tonight. One factory burned to the ground in under 9 minutes because the sand buckets had been replaced with sawdust, used for sweeping and never switched back. You look down at the match trays. They look innocent. Like toothpicks with ambition. You touch nothing. You just stand there. Sniffling once. Quietly, praying your own sneeze stays tucked in the back of your throat like a swallowed prayer. Because here, reflexes aren't accidents. They're threats. The boss thinks you blink too much. The smoke's cleared. The match trays are back in place. Marcy's still pale, but not crying because crying is a sign of softness. And softness is a threat to efficiency. You've returned to the stacking bench, fingers stiff, eyes sore. Skin now permanently scented with Oda workplace hazard. You think you're invisible here, but then comes Mr. Tunnel, the overseer, the floor walker, the man whose shoes click before you see him polished leather boots that could fund a month's wages, stepping purposefully over grime like it's beneath even his scorn. He stops behind you. You freeze, not visibly, just inside. You blink a lot, he says, voice smooth and quiet, like a knife resting on velvet. You don't reply. He crouches beside you too close and studies your hands. Your rhythm's off. You pause between bundles. You clench your left hand when you reach. He taps the bench once. You'll either get faster, he says, or you'll get replaced. And just like that, he's gone. You don't breathe again until the room exhales around you, Eliza whispers. He timed me for 12 minutes once. Never said a word. Just walked away. You whisper back? He's memorized my blinking. She nods. That's nothing. He counted my coughs last week. Historians still argue how closely Victorian overseers tracked their workers. Some claim time-motion studies and productivity records existed, even in dangerous trades. Others argue most oversight was arbitrary based on mood, politics, or a single burnt matchstick. Your fringe fact tonight: one 1870s match factory implemented a no-yawning rule, citing distraction and laziness. The fine half a day's wage. You try not to blink. You fail. You try not to pause between bundles. You fail again. But you start counting silently. Not to track your matches, but to anchor yourself. 1, 2, flick. 3, 4, press. 5, 6. Don't blink. It helps. A little. Until the match splinters and slices your thumb. You don't flinch. You just keep moving. Blood wells up. It mixes with the phosphorus dust. It burns. You keep moving anyway. Because if you stop, he'll know. And if he knows you're already gone, you're not paid for coughing. You make the mistake of coughing 3 times before lunch. Not dramatic coughs. Not the kind that echo or disrupt the trays. Just tight, dry little hacks like your lungs are trying to politely return something they didn't order. The third one earns a look. Not from Eliza, not even from Mr. Tunnel. From the ledger clerk. She's a wiry woman with ink-stained cuffs and a habit of appearing where no one expects, like mildew or dread. She steps behind you with her little black book and a tiny pencil. Scritch, scritch? That's the sound of your wage being docked. You glance back. She doesn't speak. She never does. But the look says it all. Coughing, slacking. Coughing, slowing. Coughing, costing. You press your lips shut like they're holding in secrets and sawdust. It's not enough. Your throat itches like someone's poured sulfur dust down your windpipe. You want to cough so badly it feels like a second heartbeat. You swallow it. It burns. Historians still argue whether match factories formally punished workers for illness-related interruptions. Some surviving ledgers list deductions labeled inaction, exhaustion, or, chillingly, inattention. Others suggest these were euphemisms for punishment disguised as policy. Your fringe fact tonight? A 19th century match girl once collected 19 cough penalties in a single week. Her final pay less than a loaf of bread. You press on. Bundle after bundle. You feel a tightness rising in your chest. A heaviness. It's not just the coughing. It's the knowing that every breath you take could lower your daily pay by another penny. You begin breathing in shallow pulls, just enough to keep the world from spinning. Eliza whispers, "I chew cloth when it gets bad." You nod. Later, you'll try it. For now, you bite your tongue literally. You taste blood. But no one finds you for bleeding. Just for sounding weak. You glance at the clock. Still 4 hours to go. Your cough simmers quietly, waiting. And in this factory, waiting is enough to cost you. Someone's hair just ignited. You smell it before you hear it, something sharp and awful, like singed wool and burnt sugar left in a coffin. Then comes the sound, a whoosh, a scream, a crash, then yelling, then chaos. You whip around. 3 rows down, a girl barely older than you has fire blooming across the back of her scalp. Her hair crackles like dry paper. Her hands flap uselessly at the flame. Someone screams. Bucket. Another yells. Sand. The foreman shoves through the crowd, elbowing kids aside, his voice a bark. Eliza's already moving kicks over a sand bucket with practiced precision and hurls it onto the fire with a spray that coats everything nearby. The fire dies. The smell doesn't. The girl collapses, panting, crying. Her hair's half gone, her shirt scorched, her fingers blistered. The foreman squats beside her. You expect kindness? You're wrong. He checks her tray first, then stands. Careless. He mutters. She's carried out. She doesn't come back. The rest of you back to work. Because the shift clock doesn't stop not for fire, not for flesh. You return to your bench with knees that don't quite feel solid. Your hands tremble. You grip the match bundle tighter than you should. Eliza doesn't say anything. She just picks up her pace. Historians still argue how frequent fires really were in matchstick factories. Some sources claim safety drills were well practiced. Others cite first-hand accounts that describe workers catching fire monthly, with accidents hushed to protect the brand. Your fringe fact tonight. One London factory recorded over 40 small fires in a single year. The manager's summary simply read, "Minor incidents, no interruption to output." You dip another bundle. This time, your hand shakes. You try not to let it show. You tell yourself it's over now. The fire's out. The girl's gone. The room is still again, but the scent of scorched hair. It lingers in your nostrils, in your thoughts, and in the reminder that anyone could be next. All it takes is a spark, or a breeze, or a blink too long. You get promoted to danger. It happens without ceremony. No speech, no pat on the back. Just a nod from the foreman and a single word. Dipping? You've seen the station. Everyone has. It's the beating heart of the factory, the table with rows of trays, tubs of phosphorus solution, and the constant hiss of vapors rising like smoke from a sleeping dragon. Those who dip are faster, trusted, watched, and disposable. You're handed longer gloves, thin as onion skin, stained from 100 other hands. One has a tear across the thumb. You're told to move quick, but not too quick. Speed kills, Eliza murmurs as you pass. Then, so does hesitation. The dipping line is lined with trays of pale matchsticks, raw and almost pretty. They smell faintly sweet. Sweet like a warning. Your job is to submerge each bundle into the yellow-white bath of liquid phosphorus. Count 2 seconds, lift, shake, and set to dry. Repeat. For hours. The first time you dip, your glove slips. A drop hits your wrist. It sizzles. You hiss quietly and pull your sleeve down to hide the red welt already forming. No one notices, or they pretend not to. The dipper beside you, a boy with no eyebrows and eyes like wet gravel, says, "If it smokes, slap it. If it bubbles, tell someone." You nod and try not to bubble. Historians still argue how much formal training was given for phosphorus handling. Some documents reference instruction manuals. Others suggest most workers learned by watching others, usually while someone screamed. Your fringe fact tonight. The white phosphorus used in matches at the time could spontaneously combust in open air. In at least 3 documented cases, factory workers lit cigarettes and triggered explosions. You dip and lift and shake and stack. Your arms ache, your eyes sting. The phosphorus fumes worm their way up your nostrils, leaving behind a smell you'll never fully shake. It clings to your clothes, your skin, your soul. You pause too long once. The foreman barks. You don't do that again. You work faster. And for the first time all day, you feel it, you're trusted now. Which in this place means you're valuable enough to risk. You learn to count in bundles of pain. There's no clock you can see, no window that shows the sky. The hours blur into motions, and the only way you know how much time has passed is by how far your fingers have gone from human to husk. Each bundle is 50 matches, 10 bundles per tray, 5 trays per shelf. You've dipped 12 shelves. You've handled 30,000 matchsticks. Your hands know the number even if your brain doesn't. They've memorized the angles, the weight, the little resistance that means a stick is waterlogged or about to splinter. Your fingertips are numb. That's good, in a way, because underneath the numbness, your skin is splitting. Cracks like lightning, tiny but deep, open every time you flex. You no longer flinch. It just happens. Pain has become a unit of measure. 2 bundles, you got sore. 4, you got bleeding. 6, blister. By 8, you feel nothing again. You go cold around bundle 10 when the tray gets heavier, and the fumes start curling inside your teeth like fog with a grudge. Eliza appears beside you, stacking her own trays like a ghost with purpose. Her hands are wrapped in linen strips that were white once. Now they're gray. And stiff. Use lard, she mutters. If you can find it, at night, you nod. You won't find any. You know that already. Historians still argue whether workers in match factories were provided salves or treatments. Some company records boast of hand creams and night soaks. Most girls wrote home asking for goose fat or cold water pans. Few ever got them. Your fringe fact tonight? One girl was caught stealing grease from a wagon axle outside the factory gates. When asked why, she said, "It helps the burning stop." You paused to look at your thumbs. They're not your thumbs anymore. They're tools. They're proof of time passing. Proof you're still here. At least for today. The foreman barks something from across the room. You nod before he finishes. Because bundle 31 Zuornorm is already waiting. And here slowing down hurts more than bleeding. The rat problem isn't just metaphorical. It's the scratching that wakes you. A soft, irregular scritch beneath the stack of trays near the far wall. You're on cleanup duty tonight, lucky you. And while the others get to stumble home and collapse into mattresses that might actually deserve the name, you get to sweep, sort, and listen. There it is again. Scritch. Pause, scritch. You lift a box and see them 2 beady eyes, a twitchy nose, and a tail that looks like a chewed shoelace with ambition. The rat stares at you. You stare back. It doesn't move. Neither do you. Eventually, it blinks as if bored and scuttles under the wall panel into darkness. Eliza, still here and still impossibly alert despite the hour, mutters from behind a broom. They're not afraid anymore. You nod. She continues. They know we're too tired to chase them. Which is true because the rats in this factory aren't pests. They're residents. They live under floorboards, between crates, inside the walls. They eat spilled match dust, leftover crusts, and sometimes worse. You've seen gnawed cloth. You've heard whispers of fingers nibbled while their owners slept on the floor. You'd thought those were jokes. Not anymore. Historians still argue about the role rats played in Victorian industrial life. Some accounts speak of mass infestations. Others claim they were mostly contained. But nearly all agree where there was phosphorus, there was something to chew. Your fringe fact tonight. One East End match factory posted a sign that read, "Do not sleep in the storeroom. Rats bite the soft bits first." It was considered compassionate advice. You continue sweeping. There's no light now, except the ember glow from the hearth and the occasional flicker of someone's candle stub. More movement. A scuffle. A tail vanishes under the dip tray. You freeze, then tap the broom against the floor. Not to scare them, just to remind them you're still technically a threat, Eliza says. They never go for me anymore. You ask, why not? She shrugs. Maybe I smell like matches now. You laugh. Quietly. because it's either that or cry. You finish sweeping and tip the dust into the bin. Careful not to inhale too deeply. On the way out, something brushes your ankle. You don't look, you just walk faster. Because here, the rats don't run. They wait. You're given a cough drop and a wink. The morning bell hasn't even finished echoing when you feel it, the cough. That dry, scratchy, scouring pull in your throat like you swallowed a broom, and it came back up as sandpaper. You try to swallow it. Pretend it's nothing, but your lungs have other plans. You double over slightly, trying to muffle it with your elbow. Too late. The ledger clerk notices, but she doesn't fine you. Instead, she reaches into her coat pocket and flicks something toward you with an almost amused expression. A cough drop, wrapped in cheap wax paper, slightly sticky from pocket heat, and suspiciously lemon-colored. You catch it in your hand like it's both gift and test. Earned it, she mutters, and walks away. You blink. Eliza, nearby, sees it and raises an eyebrow. Fancy, she whispers. You've been noticed. You unwrap it slowly, wondering if it's expired, or poisoned, or both. You pop it in your mouth. It tastes like sugar melted over a rusted nail, but it coats your throat. And for a moment, the fire eases. You're not used to kindness here. It feels heavier than the trays. Stranger, even. You glance back at the clerk. She doesn't look again. Just writes something in her book and disappears behind a door you're not allowed to open. Historians still argue how much worker welfare actually existed in Victorian factories. Some say owners passed out cough drops and bread crusts to avoid criticism. Others argue it was PR tiny gestures to keep inspectors quiet. Your fringe fact tonight. One factory gave out peppermint medicinal candies once per week. Workers called them poison drops, not because they hurt, but because they reminded you of what your lungs were fighting. You finish the lozenge. You can breathe. Sort of. The sweetness fades, replaced by something bitter you can't name. You pick up a bundle of matches. Your fingers crack again. Eliza leans close and says, "Careful. If they like you, they don't let you leave." You smile, but it's tight, because that cough drop wasn't kindness. It was a bookmark. And now they've marked your page. You realize the walls are breathing. It hits you in the last hour of the shift. That hazy, eerie hour when the factory lights seem dimmer than usual, not because they're lower, but because your eyes have started to lose the energy to care. You're on autopilot again. Dip, flick, tap, dry. The routine is all that's holding your spine upright. But something's off. The walls, they're moving. Not much. Just a slow swell and collapse, like a chest inhaling and exhaling. You blink hard. Once. Twice. Still there. You look around. No one else reacts. Maybe they don't see it. Maybe they stopped seeing it days ago. Your hands keep working. But your eyes? They wander, watching the bricks in the back wall shimmer slightly. The corners of the ceiling pulse. The floor feels warmer, like it's alive and grateful you're feeding it. You shake your head. Try to reset your focus. Eliza's beside you. She's chewing a matchstick like a toothpick, her lips moving slightly like she's whispering to the wood. She's done that before. You always thought it was a tic. Now you wonder if she's negotiating. You glance back at the wall, still breathing, still watching, still waiting. Historians still argue about the psychological toll of matchwork. Hallucinations were common, often chalked up to fatigue or girl hysteria. But modern research suggests chronic phosphorus exposure can trigger neurological symptoms, including confusion, tremors, and visual distortions. Your fringe fact tonight. One inspector reported a girl who insisted the factory had a face and refused to work unless she could cover the eyes with her apron. She was dismissed for disrupting morale. You drop a bundle. The clatter breaks the spell. Just noise, just matches. Just walls. You breathe out, and the bricks still shimmer. You lean forward, press your hand against the table to steady yourself. The wood is warm. 2. Eliza glances over. You'll get used to it, she says. Used to what you want to ask. But your mouth is dry. Too dry. Like your tongue has splintered. You take a sip of water from the tin cup beside you. It tastes like sulfur and survival. You blink again. The wall stops moving? Maybe. You keep working. Because here, when the walls breathe, you don't question it. You just keep exhaling with them. You get yelled at for bleeding. It's just a nick. A tiny one. Barely noticeable until you see it spreading across the edge of your cuff like ink soaking into parchment. A thin red line from your thumb. Probably from a matchstick splinter or maybe a scrape on the rusted tray edge that bit you when you reached too fast. You grab your rag and press it tight. You look around hoping no one's seen it. But someone always sees. Mr. Tunnel. Naturally. He appears at your elbow like steam from a crack in the floorboards, all frown and leather boots and the uncanny ability to make his words colder than the January wind outside. What's that, he says. You show him the rag. Hesitant. It's nothing, you say, even though it's obviously something. He tilts his head. It's blood. You nod. Because it is. He says, don't bleed on the product. You nod again. Because what else is there? It stains the wood. He continues. People think we're cutting corners. He walks away before you can promise not to bleed anymore. You wrap the rag tighter, slip your hand inside your apron, and keep working one-handed until the sting dulls into background discomfort. No one asks if you're okay. Because here, blood isn't a problem, it's a blemish. Historians still argue how injured workers were treated in 19th century factories. Some were dismissed for visible wounds. Others were allowed to keep working so long as they didn't ruin inventory or slow the line. Your fringe fact tonight. One match factory issued gloves made from paper and tar to protect wounded hands. The gloves dissolved within hours. Most workers just reused cloth scraps, rewrapped with spit and hope. You shift bundles with your good hand. Eliza doesn't look over, but she quietly slides a strip of linen onto your bench when the foreman's not watching. You nod. She still doesn't look. You realize as you keep stacking matchsticks through the pain that the bleeding isn't what bothered Mr. Tunnel. It was the proof. Proof that something human happened in the middle of his production line. Proof that someone inside this factory still had blood to give. You tuck the rag deeper under your sleeve, because here wounds aren't supposed to show. And pain is only real when it stains the wood. You're docked wages for being unconscious. It happens sometime after the second break bell, or maybe the third. You've lost count. Time here doesn't tick. It drips. Each moment sliding slowly into the next until the hours feel like they're made of syrup and cement. You remember standing. You remember reaching for a tray. You remember the ache in your spine, the tingle in your knees, the slow burn behind your eyes that feels less like fatigue and more like your soul trying to escape. Then nothing. Just floor. When you open your eyes, the ceiling is flickering. Shadows from the furnace dance across the beams above like they're mocking you for needing rest. Voices murmur, you're not sure how long you were out. Eliza's face swims into view above yours. She doesn't look surprised, just mildly annoyed. You scared the clerk, she says. Don't do it again? You try to speak. It comes out as a cough. Someone shoves a tin cup into your hand. Water. Warm. Tastes like rust and maybe hope. The foreman doesn't come. But when you drag yourself upright, the ledger woman appears like a ghost with a pen. She scratches something into the book. Docked pay. You don't argue. You don't ask how much. You already know however much it takes to remind you this isn't charity. Historians still argue how medical emergencies were handled in matchstick factories. There were no nurses, no first aid stations. Some larger factories employed a watchwoman, but her job was mostly to record faintings, not prevent them. Your fringe fact tonight: one worker collapsed, cracked 2 ribs on the floor, and was billed for damaging the tray she landed on. You return to your bench. Slowly. Your tray is gone, someone else claimed it. So you start over. You feel dizzy again almost immediately. But you push through. Because here passing out is not the worst thing that can happen. Waking up to fewer wages, that's worse. Much worse, Eliza says. Next time, do it near the wall. Less dramatic. You smile. Or maybe grimace. Same difference now. The air still tastes like sulfur. The light still flickers. And you're still here. Barely. But still. And that means the shift isn't over. Not until the bell. Or your legs. Whichever gives first. Sleep like you're still on the clock. You walk home in the dark, though walk might be generous. It's more of a shuffle, really. A lurch between sore legs and screaming joints. You carry the weight of the shift in your spine, in your fingers, in the ache behind your eyes where the phosphorus still lingers like a ghost that refuses to leave. The streets are wet, not from rain, just damp. London damp. A permanent sog that soaks your boots and sneaks up your sleeves like it's trying to borrow your bones for a while. You pass the bakery, it's closed. But the scent flour, yeast, warm crust feels like a hallucination, like a kindness you don't deserve. You press on. The boarding house is one room, a cot, a blanket, a window that doesn't shut all the way. You peel off your clothes slowly. Your apron crackles as it hits the floor. Your undershirt leaves behind dust. You cough once out of habit more than necessity. The matchstick dust is in your lungs now. In your blood. In your dreams. You lie down on the cot. The mattress feels like a sack of broom handles and regrets. But it's horizontal. That's enough. Your fingers throb. Your shoulder stings from where the tray slipped. Your thumb's still bleeding, but it's scabbed over barely. You stare at the ceiling. It's not breathing this time. Not yet. You close your eyes, and the matches are still there. Dipping, shaking, stacking. They float behind your eyelids, burned into the backs of them like an afterimage of labor. You're still working, even in your sleep. Because here, rest doesn't come free. You dream of matchsticks snapping, not from pressure, just from being tired. And when you finally sleep, you do it with your hands curled into fists, as if you're still counting bundles. Because part of you is, because part of you always will be. Now let it fade. Let the steam of that final shift dissolve like breath in cold air, soft and slow, until even your aching limbs begin to forget where they hurt. You don't have to carry the tray anymore. Not right now. Not here. Not in this quiet. Let your fingers uncurl, your shoulders soften, and your breath return to you not in ragged gasps between bursts of work, but in long, even waves. The kind of breath no one's watching, no one's counting, no one's writing down in a ledger. You are safe now. Not forever, but for a moment. The hum of the factory is gone. The phosphorus smoke has cleared. The cold, hard cot has given way to something warmer. Softer, maybe a blanket that smells like soap instead of sulfur. You can rest. You've earned it. Even if the walls breathed at you. Even if the rats watched you. Even if the air burned your name into your lungs. Let it go. Let it all fall away brick by brick, tray by tray until what's left is only you, floating quiet and weightless in a space where time is no longer measured in matchsticks. Just sleep now. And let the silence hold you like arms that don't expect anything in return. No work tomorrow, no tally marks, no fire. Just dreams. And quiet. And the soft, steady promise of rest.